from a Patriots standpoint of this week, there's not much in this game that really gives me juice. In fact, I had more juice than the last time these two teams met back in Foxborough because it was the absolute toilet bowl. This Patriots-Dolphins, it was Snoop Huntley versus Jacoby Brissett. And the Patriots actually should have won that game. They kind of got jobbed at the end of it with that stupid rule about the toe tap, but only in certain parts of the end zone. It was a whole thing. But it was just absolute Special Olympics football. I think it'll be a little bit better this week. The Dolphins have Tua back. They've won 4 games. It's going to be Tua versus Drake May. But again, in terms of like storylines of this one, we already know what's going to happen. Like Drake May is going to play well. Are his receivers going to catch the ball? Is the defense going to hold up against the run? How many coaching mistakes are the Patriots going to make, and is it going to kill them? Like that's where we're at for this game in particular. Now, there are some things that are bouncing around this week that have caught my interest because I watched the Manning cast. I'm starting to watch the Manning cast more regularly. I've watched it the last 2 weeks with Belichick on there, and I'm honestly as big a fan of the Manning cast as I have been ever. And like Eli's still Peyton's funny, a little bit too much Bitsville, but I actually, being a football nerd, just love having Belichick on there. Is he entertaining? Is he funny? Like, no, not traditionally entertaining, but he will talk a ton of football and like break it down in the game. So I'm watching the other night. It's Cowboys and Texans. And the Cowboys have no run game, like at all. One of the worst running teams in the league. And they have a 2nd and 8 or so. And they're looking at the formation, and Peyton says, run the ball here. Look at that, whatever, 2 high safety or whatever it is. Run the ball here. And Rico Dowdle runs for about a yard. And Belichick says, screw that. Don't run the ball on 2nd and 1. That's it. Short passes. The screen is your run game. And he says, with this offense, the screen is your run game. And what he meant by that was when your run game sucks and you don't value the position of the running back, short passes are your run game. And I love that because that's what Belichick did for years with the Patriots. For years. You'd have some pro back out there, but never anything special at running back. And he just totally changed the idea in his time with the Patriots of the run sets up the pass, because he made it the short pass sets up the pass. It does the same thing to the defense. You can do jet sweeps. You can do screen passes. You could even do shallow crosses and you get the same thing. It's still going to soften up the defense and change how they're attacking you. So it's like stuff like that I'm like, yes, man, yes. And how are more coaches not doing this? Run on 2nd and 1. Other than that, don't do it in this kind of offense. And by that, it means a team that struggles to run the ball and that is down most of the time, and they were down in that game. So I love having that stuff on there. Now, he's not necessarily entertaining or funny, nor terribly critical, because he wants to coach again. And of course, the rumors have been flying around that team that was playing on Monday night at home, the Cowboys, could be the team that he's coaching next year. I happen to disagree, but I don't think it's totally out of the question. Everyone's talking about how no way he's going to work with Jarrah, and Jarrah's not going to work with him. And Jerry's not going to give him the keys. He's not going to make him the GM because Jerry's the GM. And he's already done the Bill Parcells thing, which is very similar, and it didn't work out. So I get that part of it. And that's still the overwhelming part of it for me. But there's also that part that says Jerry's in his 80s now, and they're about to go into a rebuild. They still have some talent there. They have some talent at the most important positions that we see in the NFL now, and that's quarterback, wide receiver, pass rusher. And they are a team that won 12 games last year. They're going to bottom out now. They're going to win like 4 or 5 this year. But there's enough talent there that you can work with it. And the uncertainty of the other 2 teams outside of Philadelphia in that division, Jaden Daniels could be a flash in the pan, and you're stuck with a Dan Quinn Commanders team, and the Giants are the Giants. So I say that to say there's probably talent there that the right coach can get them into the postseason even as soon as next year. And Jerry's got to look at that and say, How many shots am I going to have at this? How many more bites at the apple am I going to have before this is a complete rebuild? Because there's some organizations that would do complete rebuild right now with what the Cowboys got. So if I'm Jerry, I'm seriously considering, we've got the best coach in the history of the NFL out there. Let's just give it a shot. Let's just give it a go. I've tried the Jason Garrett and the Mike McCarthy crap. Let's go with an actual guy who's won a ton of Super Bowls and a ton of games in this league. The time that he got full control, he made it the greatest dynasty ever. And if I'm Jerry, I'm not even looking at the Brady part of it, because that's a different argument. If I'm Jerry, I'm like, just give this a go. And if it doesn't work, I say, hey, I gave the keys to the greatest coach in the history of the league. What more do you want me to do? I gave up my GM position. That's what you wanted me to do. I gave it to the guy who built the best dynasty ever. What else do you want me to do? So that part of it, I think, is still there. And it would take a massive change of course for Jerry. But at some point, you've got to consider something like that. But yeah, I think he's more liable to get Jason Witten to coach the team from coaching a high school team, or Deion Sanders from coaching Colorado, than he would Bill Belichick. So that's why I have the Cowboys firmly second on the power rankings of 2. Because the number 1 option is one that Mike Florio brought up earlier this week. Now, I'm not a huge Florio fan, but you've got to admit, Florio's really plugged in, and he's been around this thing for a long time. And he has a suggestion of where Bill Belichick could be coaching next year.
Well, Maria, before the season started, team owner Shad Kahn said, "This is the best team the Jaguars have ever assembled. Let's prove it by winning now." So here we are, 2-9. Worst loss today in franchise history. Bye week coming up. Doug Peterson was asked after the game about the possibility of being fired. He said, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And it could happen soon. Now, what about the guy that put together the best team ever assembled, General Manager Trent Baalke? I've talked to several people throughout the league, and there's a belief in some circles he could potentially survive into next year as part of a package deal that would reunite him with someone he worked with back in 1998 and 1999 with the New York Jets. That coach is available. He's won a few Super Bowls. His name is Bill Belichick.
His name is Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, I think that makes sense for some of the reasons he listed there and some that he did not. But they talked about the talent that was on this roster this year. Shad Kahn has obviously been pretty brash about it, that they have a ton of talent out there. And they sent 4 guys to the Pro Bowl, over the last 2 seasons. One of them is Ross Matisic, the long snapper from Baylor, by the way. But you've got the pieces on defense. You thought they gave up 52 to the Lions last week. You thought you had the pieces on defense. You've got guys like Evan Ingram. You've got a good locked up quarterback, decent locked up quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And you play in a division that's mostly up for grabs. Houston's obviously the best team in that division, but the other 2 are right. Tennessee's not going anywhere anytime soon, and Indianapolis has no clue what it's doing. So there's a path there to the playoffs. The other thing that Mike Florio did not bring up there, but the thing that would attract Belichick, is they will give him the keys. They will give him the control. He will be the GM of that team as well as the head coach, or at least have a huge say in personnel decisions. At least that. President of football ops, whatever you want to call it. Belichick will have control over that team, and he's working with a guy he's worked with before. If you want to maximize the talent that you've got right now, I don't know why you wouldn't be looking at Bill Belichick. If you're looking for a rebuild and developing a quarterback, I'm probably not looking at Bill Belichick, right? Because the last quarterback he developed is the backup on your roster right now in Jacksonville, and he's ass. So I'm not doing that. But if I'm looking at a team that is ready to go, then I'm taking a real hard look at Bill Belichick. And another team that should be looking at him is the Chicago Bears. Now, Cam, you just said if you want to develop a quarterback, why would you go with Bill Belichick? Well, yeah, but you bring in an OC, a Josh McDaniels type who has developed young quarterbacks. You bring him in, and he's working with Caleb Williams, and Belichick is focusing on everything else for a roster that is ready to win now. Then I think that's a hell of a situation for him to go to in a good way. Jacksonville and Chicago. These were two teams coming into the season that were not seen as Super Bowl contenders, but were certainly looking at win now scenarios with the roster that they had and a team that had playoff ambitions. So if you've got that, you've got the pieces, you've got the guys who are ready to win, specifically in the case of Chicago, all those veterans they brought in who are ready to win. Who else would you rather have than someone who is going to completely change your culture in the right direction, win now mentality, hold everyone accountable, and get your team ready to play every week and out-scheme the other teams? I don't know why you wouldn't look at Bill Belichick, to be honest with you. The other team that could use a guy like Bill Belichick is the Jets, but I don't know if that's happening anytime soon. I didn't rule it out earlier this year. I didn't.
We are Rogue Media Sports.